So links golf generally it's quote unquote considered sort of the oldest form of golf, or sort of like the oldest form of course design and sort of style of play, I guess would be a more accurate way to put it. Links golf is really sort of what Scotland is known for, and you see it sort of throughout the UK just sort of broadly. The biggest thing that characterizes it is that they're mostly sort of pretty close to the coast, so the soil is relatively sandy, and it's relatively hard packed at this point. And the only thing that can grow on this, sort of sandy soil is what they call fescue grass, and they basically run fescue grass for everything. It's when you see guys in the British Open trying to hack it out of like knee deep hay, that's fescue rough. When you see balls bouncing through fairways and taking, it looks sort of like a plinko machine as it's sort of rolling down the fairway, and it's sort of bouncing off all these compacted sand dunes. That's fescue grass. It tends to be a little bit spongier. It creates a firmer surface for them to land on. And then because these aren't sort of uniform flat landing surfaces like you see on typical American golf courses, and because they're quite a bit firmer, what you get is a lot more randomness, particularly off the tee, where the ball can just sort of spray anywhere and squirt anywhere, which can be a frustrating experience for guys. That's part two. Part three, when you look at fescue greens, they typically don't run as fast. So it's a difficult adjustment for players. You'll see a lot of players adding weight to their putters, sort of maybe trying different putters with different inserts to see if they can get a little bit more pop on it, so they don't have to change their stroke quite as much, because these greens will probably be running around 10 on what they call the stimp meter. To put that in perspective, PGA Tour events typically run around probably 13, 14. You get to Augusta and they don't really like to talk about it, but it's probably closer to 15 or 16. And that's basically like maxed out. Like once you get to 16, like it's like, all right, like now we're like not having fun. Like now you just start dropping the ball, and like if there's too much undulation, it just like rolls like 50 yards away.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the bare bones of what it is. The course designs are, typically relatively flat, just sort of with those gentle undulations from the dunes. Pop bunkers with fairly loose sand sort of are typical of those courses. What pop bunkers mean is when you walk into a bunker playing at home, your local muni, there's generally kind of a low side to it, and you just kind of like walk in there and you don't have to like jump into it. Pot bunkers don't have that sort of like easy sort of just walk down there. They're just big holes cut in the sod, and they just go straight down vertical all the way around. So there's no sort of, nice little gentle upslope. There's no moment where, you don't have much of a lip to contend with. Everything is basically just a flop bunker shot, and you're just doing the best you can. And if it gets up against the side of one of those bunkers, you're almost in the position a lot of times where you have to take an unplayable lie and drop it outside of the bunker, just in order to have a shot at all. So that's sort of the defining characteristics, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of, I mean, those are different than what we've been talking about all year long. My big thing with like the question I have for you when we come to the question of like handicapping some of this stuff, what statistics should we look at, is because of the loamy soil, which means the ball sprays, is driving distance as big of an advantage? Because what you'll see a lot is like, you'll see guys say, well, okay, driving distance is really could be an advantage because the ball can bounce and roll a lot. But I mean, what if it starts rolling in the grass? Well, then all of a sudden you got to worry about rough or scrambling or whatever. So is that something you're looking at this week? Driving distance, any off the tee statistics?
The thing is that length doesn't typically play as big of a factor in like my handicapping, nor do strokes gained off the tee. I've seen it popping up a lot, sort of like reading around, sort of people being like, oh, this is important, blah, blah, blah. For me, driving approach, like, or strokes gained off the tee isn't as much. I feel like there's so much randomness. Like once the ball just hits the ground, it just starts doing weird things. And these courses, Royal Liverpool and Renaissance Club, there's going to be, balls that just bounce off the fairway and into the rough, which is going to be annoying for guys. And then there are going to be a lot of balls that bounce around on the fairway and then end up in one of those pot bunkers. And these aren't bunkers that guys can just like take a 7-iron on and like hit out. They're going to be things where they're taking a wedge and then hoping that they can, have a third shot in to try and maybe save par or bogey, at worst case. So it's a little bit different. I guess the famous example would be in 2006, Tiger Woods won the Open Championship at Hoylake. He hit one driver in 72 holes. One.
Yeah, one.
So you don't need to hit driver or be a great driver of the golf ball in order to win these things. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, I guess.
At the same time, Tiger Woods hit the ball 1,000,000 yards further than everybody else. So, I mean, that is a good example, but unless you're out driving everybody and as accurate as Tiger was with the wedges, I mean, it's a little bit of a false dichotomy to compare him to everyone else. Although I do take your point there. As far as we'll talk about the Renaissance Club in a minute, but kind of as far as what I'm looking at in any links golf, I do like some stuff off the tee, a little bit of accuracy, but scrambling, par 5 and par 3 averages, any sand save situations, like I say, with those pop bunkers, anything around the green. I mean, I think that's really where these guys tend to struggle, especially if the weather is bad, because if the weather's bad, everybody's just gonna be spraying the ball everywhere. So you're going to have to be able to make up strokes off the green and on the green in order to, lead a tournament when it comes to especially something like Renaissance, which is right off the coast. So, there's a couple of those things I'm looking at. I'm not as skeptical that these guys who hit the ball really far can't take advantage of that, but I do take your point that it is not as big of an issue as I think some people think it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that, approach numbers, short game numbers are more important here, but obviously you can't be just a total liability off the tee.
Well, and
but nobody that we're looking at is.
That's been your approach all season. I mean, you've been talking about a approach and ball strikers like pretty much all season. It's been a long time since you've really picked some bombers. So, you're definitely more comfortable with some of these guys who are ball strikers, as am I. They tend to put themselves in contention more, and they don't ride the wave. Like if Gary Woodland figures everything out, yeah, I mean, he can win a major. Same thing with Wyndham Clark. But if their iron play isn't there, then the stuff off the tee is difficult to take. So some of those guys will really have to wake up and play well with their irons. Nate, one of the ways that I wake up every morning, as you know, is with Beard Vet coffee. Just some of the most incredible coffee. I was on the site today ordering more Beard Vet coffee. I went to beardvet.com. That's where you got to go, beardvet.com. They've got all sorts of coffee. I bought the house blend, a whole bean. They got these 12-ounce bags. It's $12.99, super cheap, and they'll get here in a jiffy. I also bought a little, what do you call those things? Those Yeti cups. So they have a great deal right now on a Yeti cup with the Beard Vet. It's like one of the coffee mugs, right, with the Beard Vet logo on it. Also like $12-13, really cheap. That stuff is extremely expensive if you go to Yeti or any of those other sites. So super cheap. And look, you put in the promo code Godzilla. That's Godzilla, just like Godzilla wins, Godzilla, and you get 10% off. Free shipping over $40. So throw in a couple bags of coffee, maybe some swag, get that thing over 40, and then drop it down with the 10% off Godzilla promo code.